Hi, I'm Jason, and welcome back to another one of our STEAM Bites workshops. These workshops are 10 to 15 minutes long, and they are intended to give you resources and activities that you can implement immediately with your students with minimal to no resources. Today's workshop is going to focus around using engineering, the engineering design process, and teamwork to accomplish a task. The materials that we're going to use will hopefully be readily available to you. These are materials that you may find around the home or can pick up at the grocery store for minimal cost. So I have two activities that I want to share with you today. The first one is used sometimes as an icebreaker with adults, and it ports very easily into the classroom, and it's called the Marshmallow Challenge or the Marshmallow and Spaghetti Challenge. The idea is to get your participants familiar with spaghetti as a building material. You may want to provide each participant or each student with one strip of spaghetti and allow them to analyze it and ask them guiding questions such as, is this a good building material? Why or why not? Now, some students may be familiar with the characteristics of spaghetti. If you bend it, it's going to break right in half. So some may say, no, this is a very brittle material. This is not very good for building. Other students may say, well, since they're long strips of spaghetti, they actually can be connected or used in a very specific way that will allow you to build, assuming the building needs to be tall or long, something that's conducive to the size of spaghetti. As the students are analyzing their strip of spaghetti, they are identifying benefits, of course, and also constraints. And in engineering, constraints is a very important thing to consider. You tend to see constraints enter into upper elementary and definitely at the middle school grades where students are identifying either a lack of resources or maybe a lack of time, maybe a lack of money if there's a financial component tied to their engineering project. They'll start to identify constraints and that you could build the most magnificent thing in the world if those constraints were not going against you. But of course, we're always working against constraints in every task that we do, and engineering is no different than that. So getting students familiar with the idea that, hey, this isn't necessarily the best building material, but this is what we've got. So now the engineering challenge is to use spaghetti to work and to work as a team to get a marshmallow as high off of the table as possible. So what you'll want to do is combine your students into groups of 3 or 4. Studies have shown that groups of 3 or 4 work the best. Anything less than that and the learning kind of drops off if you do pairs, although pairs are much better option for you than if you were to do groups any larger than 4. Groups 5 and larger, there's just too many cooks in the kitchen, and it's not as beneficial for your groups to work in that kind of environment. So 3 to 4 is the sweet spot. Break them up into that group and give each group approximately 10 strips of spaghetti. Ultimately, what you're going to do is you're going to give them the amount of spaghetti that you have available to you. And so figure out how many groups you have and then divide up your spaghetti. Now, once they have their spaghetti, you'll need some sort of material that can bind the spaghetti together. You may want to use tape. Maybe you have clay or Play-Doh, or maybe you want to use smaller marshmallows, the mini marshmallows. Those work really well for this too, but make sure you save the big ones or maybe even the jumbo ones, although the jumbo ones, that would be a really difficult challenge for them to accomplish. But in any case, the medium-sized marshmallows, and then maybe for the connectors, mini marshmallows. But in any case, the largest marshmallow that you have, the challenge is for the students to get that marshmallow as high off the table as possible. And they're going to try any number of techniques to get this thing elevated off the ground. They may build a tripod. They may build, any number of designs. In the beginning, if spaghetti strips break, you can replace them, but after a while, you have to know that, hey, you can replace maybe 2 or 5, but after that, there won't be any more replacements. You'll want to make this challenge accessible to them, but also let them know that they can't constantly break their materials and expect replacements, because again, having a limited amount of pieces to build with, that is a constraint that we are working with. Now, this has been done numerous times, and there's actually been some studies about the actual challenge. The studies have shown that adults like to build their structure first and then place the marshmallow at the very top, hoping and keeping their fingers crossed that the structure will hold. In many cases, the structure is not strong enough. It'll either break or topple over with the weight of the additional marshmallow. The same studies showed that younger students, we're talking like elementary school students, will start by placing their marshmallow on a strip of spaghetti and building underneath it. So their structure is always strong enough and always supporting their marshmallow because the marshmallow was there from the very beginning. So that's an interesting tidbit that you may find in your students. They may prefer to build with the marshmallow in place first, or they may decide to put their marshmallow on top at the very end. But in either case, you are leaving the groups the opportunity to work through that decision-making process on their own. And if they fail, that is part of the process. Knowing how to fail successfully and knowing how to rebound and come back from a failure is very much a part of the engineering design process, even if it's not explicitly written. Being able to go back to the beginning and go back to the drawing board and start from the beginning is a crucial aspect of engineering design. So that's challenge number one. I won't necessarily build a tower for you, but you get the idea from here, right? You use your spaghetti strips. I would say give them at least 10 strips of spaghetti to start with, maybe a little bit more, and allow them to, and give them a connector piece. Again, I have tape with me, Scotch tape, masking tape, whatever you have, Play-Doh, clay, something that's moldable, or even mini marshmallows if you happen to pick those up at the store as well. Great connector pieces, allows for a lot of different designs. Now, the winning challenge is going to be the one that is off the ground the highest, so make sure you have some sort of measuring stick, a yardstick or meter stick would be fantastic. Or, of course, you know, some way of measuring, some way of marking and measuring one design compared to the other. Now, that is design number one. Ultimately, the groups are going to decide what type of design they are going to build. They are going to execute it as a team, and they are going to hope that their design works by placing the marshmallow on top. The intention there is get the students to start working together and overcoming challenges together. The second activity is also sometimes used as an icebreaker, and this one is going to definitely require group participation and group collaboration, but that may not become apparent in the very beginning. You may want to spin this activity as one that they can do solo, but it would be much easier, much better off if they work together. So you can show that working together as a team is many times much more productive than working independently. So for this one, we're going to put our spaghetti aside. We are going to use plastic cups. Well, any disposable cup, really. I have clear plastic cups. They're solo cups. They work really well. I wouldn't go any smaller than a solo cup. You need something that's kind of wide for this challenge. So solo cups happen to work for me. Now, you will provide each student with a piece of string. Each student gets a piece of string, and then each group, again, groups of 3 or 4, each one will get a rubber band. So 1 string per student, 1 rubber band per group. Now, they have the rubber band and their string, and your challenge to them is to stack these cups. Now, to make it even more difficult, say, hey, lay these cups down on the ground, turn one upside down. You can arrange them however you want to start with. But the constraint in this case is stack the cups, but you cannot use your hands. In fact, your hands, or any part of your body for that matter, because students will get creative, cannot come into contact with these cups at all. The only thing that can come into contact with these cups are the materials provided, string and rubber band. So what are they going to do? What are they going to come up with? Allow them to brainstorm and allow them to think of things that might permit them to turn one cup around, to right the second cup, and then ultimately to stack the cups one on top of the other. Will they be successful? It's possible. Students may find a way to wrap the string around, or maybe they'll work together to create some sort of design here where they can transport the cups. But again, keep in mind, anytime their hand comes in contact with the cup, they have to start over. And we're working off of the honor system here. Students can't even apply pressure, like they can't put the string against the cup and then press on the cup through the string. That's not permitted either. It's strictly using the materials that and not masking their own movements through the materials. So how are we going to fix this, or how are we going to stack these cups with these materials? So allow students to struggle, allow them to get close, allow them, you'll hear it too in your class. You'll hear the students' voices escalate and they'll get excited, and then you'll hear that telltale sound of the plastic cup hitting the floor or hitting the table. You know, that maybe they got close, but they didn't quite get there. Again, some students may be successful. Can they replicate the success on a regular basis, or was it a fluke? Right? So that's something that you may want to ask, and you may want to say in a design challenge, you want to be able to be predictable and you want to know how to solve this problem over and over again rather than, oh, I just got lucky this one time. So here's what you can do after you allow your students to think through the process. Ask them to take their rubber band and to combine all of their strings. Now, up until this point, each one of the students had their own string, and they may feel a certain amount of possession over that string. And they don't realize that by combining their materials all together, they can not only combine their resources, but work together with those resources to accomplish this task. So what I've done, and what one solution to this engineering design challenge is to tie each end of the string. And again, if you have a group of 3, this is how yours will look. If you have a group of 4, you'll just have an extra one. Tie the strings to the rubber band in this way, so that the rubber band is in the center. And now each student will hold on to their string and they will pull. Now, there's 3 strings here and I'm one person and I can only pull in 2 different directions. But let's see if I can use my elbow to give you an idea of what this looks like. When you pull in all 3 different directions, your rubber band stretches out, and this one will create a triangle. And if you stretch it far enough, that opening will be just large enough for you to place the rubber band around the cup. Let's see if I can do this with 2 hands. I'm sure by now you get the idea, right? So now I'm not touching the cups, but I'm using my materials to wrap around the cup. There we go. So now I can pick my cup up this way. I can maneuver it. I can bring it up top. And then, of course, once I place my cup in the right spot, by working together and having all 3 or 4 students pull at the same time, they can remove that rubber band from around the cup. I'm not going to be able to do it here by myself, but they will be able to accomplish this task easily, predictably, readily, if they work together. So how are they going to come up with this design? This isn't necessarily something that students will think of on their own. Maybe some students will, but this isn't as intuitive as it sounds. It's obvious after you see the design, but not necessarily for students who are staring at a blank slate. So it's not necessarily about coming up with the right design solution. It's instead more important to show the importance of working together as a team, sharing resources, collaborating, and ultimately working together. That's the objective of this activity. And again, you're using some aspects of engineering design to help accomplish that. I would love to hear how you incorporate engineering design into your team building and teamwork activities. If you have any of those examples, please do share them with me and the rest of the participants and our session today. If not, I hope that this was informative, and I hope that you're able to implement this with your students when you're back with your group. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you next time.